Hey, it's Dave from the camera store, and this is the Canon RF 28 2.8 lens. So this is it. This is the Canon RF 28mm 2.8 lens, and it's a pancake style lens, meaning it is incredibly small, very tiny little lens. We're gonna get more about the physical part of it a little bit later. But what's a 28mm lens good for? Now, for those of you who've been following the channel for a while, know that my personal preference is the 35mm lens. I love that focal length for capturing life. The 28mm is just a little bit wider, and I'm okay with that. I mean, recently we did a review on the Leica Q3, which is a fixed 28mm lens. So why is this such a popular lens for shooting street? Well, it gives you the ability to capture some really nice environmental kind of portrait work, people in their workplace and that kind of stuff. So shooting street, it's a natural to have a 28mm lens. So even though this isn't the 35mm, which is my preference, I'm okay with it. There's a lot going on inside of this tiny little lens, both in its design and its functionality. So let's talk about that next. So this is the lens mounted on the Canon R5, and it barely feels like it's there. I mean, the lens itself is very small. It's only 1 inch in depth, or 25mm, and it comes in at 120 grams or 4.2 ounces. It's very small and lightweight. And here, mounted on the Canon R5, the lens barely protrudes above the actual grip itself. And because of that, we have very few controls on the lens itself. We do have that knurled ring on the very end of the lens, but it's half the size of the other knurled rings and some other lenses in the RF lineup. And that lens does double duty. You have a switch on here, you go from manual focus to autofocus, or use it as a control ring option, which you can program multiple things into. But that's it. As far as the lens goes, it's very small, very simple. Now, it does have a 55mm filter thread, and because of its design with this very tiny front optic, we can put on a lens hood, but the lens hood feels like it's part of the lens itself. It doesn't flare out like we're so used to with so many other lens hoods. So the lens itself is very simple with its operation and in its controls. Now, it is not weather sealed, so be aware of that. But where this lens gets very interesting is when you dig inside the optics. If you take a look at this lens from the rear end, you're gonna see that we have a really odd element to it. It looks kind of wavy. It's very interesting. The rear 3 elements are actually spherical, and they are made out of resin. They are a wavy kind of pattern. It's very unique. I guarantee you're gonna stare at this lens and go, is this thing broken? What's going on with this thing? Now, as cool as the optics are to look at in the back of this lens, how do they perform? We're gonna talk about image quality next. Now, I am enjoying walking around with this very small, diminutive little lens. It's very nice to work with. However, I have to be happy with the image quality, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, with this lens, we do have those 3 spherical resin elements in the back of this lens, and we are subject to 7-blade aperture. This is more of a budget-friendly lens, coming in about $400 Canadian, so I'm not expecting the top end of the optical quality, but I am expecting some pretty decent images. So what are we getting out of this? What can you expect from this lens? Take a look at this shot here, shot on the Canon R5 against our brick wall test, and you can see the center sharpness is very good. And even in the corners, we are delivering some very good image quality. Stop it down a little bit, and it only improves marginally. Now, you are gonna get some vignetting. Corners are gonna darken off a little bit, but that's natural for a 28mm lens. The wider you get, the more you're gonna run into that problem. That's easily correctable in post-production. For me, the biggest issue is gonna be with chromatic aberration, which this lens is certainly subject to a little bit. However, the biggest issue I have optically with this lens is its barrel distortion. Now, it's not terrible, and the great thing about modern technology is that the cameras themselves have lens profiles built into it, so they really eliminate a lot of those problems in camera. I never have to worry about it. But if you do work with raw files, you are working on that side of it, you are gonna see it a little more substantial if you're doing it in post-production. And the other thing that I found with this is that I am able to produce some sun stars, although they're not as nice and as pointy as a higher end lens is. So here's what you can expect as far as the sun stars goes with this lens. Now, when it comes to the bokeh, those 7-blade apertures certainly play a big factor in what I'm able to achieve. Now, I do have very close focusing with this lens at 0.23 meters. So 23 centimeters away from the focal plane allows me some pretty unique perspective, and I can get nice and close and get a really kind of cool look. But it really shows off the bokeh I can achieve here. Now, keep in mind with 7-blade apertures, the autofocus areas aren't going to be quite as pleasing as the higher aperture blade circular apertures that are on the market. And certainly if you have any specular highlights, they will take on a particular shape if you stop it down. But if you're well aware of what this lens can do and its properties, you can certainly manipulate your environment to get the results that you want. I mean, overall, I'm very happy with the image quality I'm getting out of this lens, and for me, I keep having to remind myself, this is their more budget-friendly lens, coming in at $400 Canadian, and it's delivering well above its price point as far as image quality goes. Now when it comes to the autofocus, Canon has put their STM motors into this lens, and it does acquire focus very quickly, especially if I'm just shooting general purpose kind of stuff. I mean, as you look around here, right, you can hear the beep as I find focus. It's when you want to go to that extreme. If I go from really close to really far, there's a bit more of a delay with that. And you can see that on our wall test here as I pop in and out of frame here. It does take a second for it to kind of go to that whole range. However, for most use cases, this lens focuses very, very quickly. So overall, what do I make of this lens and the whole shooting experience with it? Well, I'm finding myself gravitating to it more and more. I mean, if 28mm is the important factor for you, there's multiple zoom lenses that you can get at a very decent price as well. However, you are going to give up some of the aperture. Now, if you want that 2.8 aperture, you're certainly going to spend a lot more, and there are some lenses for you. So I do find that Canon has a very nice little spot set for this lens. 28mm is a great walk-around range. It's fantastic, and the light gathering ability at f2.8 certainly opens up a lot of options for general purpose shooting. I love the size of this because I'm getting the image quality I want out of it with very little inconvenience of having to carry it around. I mean, yes, we do have some bigger options. The 28 to 70 f2 is an amazing lens, but it's significantly more expensive and weighs a lot more. So this 28mm I can throw into my bag, it doesn't weigh me down, and I'm very happy with the image quality I'm getting out of it. Now, I of course want to know what you guys think of this lens. Do you like the pancake style lens, or do the optical properties kind of worry you a little bit? Let me know in the comments down below. Follow us both on Instagram, and please subscribe, hit the notification bell. We'll catch you again next time. Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching our video on this very tiny little lens from Canon. If you want to check out more of our recent content, click up here. And if you are Canadian and you want to shop local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.